Hey, welcome to the episode 3 of the Xplor Podcast with Scott and Ryan. We like to talk about real estate entrepreneurship and many other things. And today we're going to talk a little bit about short-term rentals.
Yeah, hey everybody, welcome. And Ryan's got to work on the introduction a little bit, but we'll get there. We're still kind of figuring this thing out. Technical issues are getting better. I think we might have some malfunctioning equipment. So anyway, yeah, Ryan, I'll kind of let you kick it off today, and chat. And I'll just kind of step in and go.
Yeah, so last podcast we talked about the real estate market as a whole, and we wanted to talk about, short-term rentals have become very popular in the past several years with Airbnb coming on market, letting the average person kind of get in the hotel business, if you will. And just for the listeners, let's a definition of short-term rental. If you look it up on Google, it says 30 days or less. I like to think maybe 6 months or less, 3 months. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm just on my screen here a little bit. Everybody's a little different. Personally, 6 months or less is probably accurate. 30 days. Yeah, some people's 30, 60, 90 days. I really would say short term is 6 months or less personally. Is that and that's what Google, I think, says it is too. And being in the business and having several rentals, that's kind of what I would justify it as. 3 months, at 3 months, they just start kind of getting in the groove, and then it feels like they just move in and they're already moving out. So I do think 6 months is probably the right ratio. I think a lot of people assume short-term rentals to be, oh, that's an Airbnb, that's a weekend stay, and really, that's not the case. It's 6 months or less, in my opinion, Ryan. And yeah, I agree. I think it's become such a fad in the last couple of years. All the um, social media influencers talking about it. Everybody talking about, oh, house hacks and short-term rentals, and I'm making $20,000 a month off of this rental, and going and signing a lease and then subleasing it out. And I can tell you, just being in the business, a lot of the stuff you're hearing is probably jargon. It's not accurate. We personally own quite a few properties, several dozen. We've done everything from long term, as far as 4 or 5 years in residential properties on some of our leases, to short term as far as Airbnbs and people staying a day at a time. And just in our general market here in Kansas City, there is a market for it. But we really found, after you break down all the costs for cleaning and all the additional costs for management, and if you really do break it down per hour of what you're spending communicating with people as they're coming, as they're going, all the touch points you have to have with somebody, and coordination. Now, if you hire a management company, then you're paying for the management company, everything else. But when you really start to break it down, where our properties were, we've got some in great locations. I mean, throughout the city, not prime for Airbnb in my opinion, but what we found is that after you broke it down, your gross was great, but the net really wasn't what everybody makes it out to be. The net profit, I mean by that. Yeah, we might have made a few $100s more, but I think on average, we did it for about a year on one property. Well, no, on multiple properties, and we really averaged about the same, or sometimes even a little bit less. Now, we aren't air.
Less than
We
a
don't.
long-term rental, to clarify.
Yeah, on the month to month. And we aren't specialists in the Airbnb, so I'm sure there were a lot of inefficiencies. Um, but just want to make it clear that a lot of the stuff, I know a lot of investors. Um, there are some people that are very successful at it. You had to have a house in pretty dang good spot to really make the crazy profits that some of these people are talking about. It's probably honestly the 1%.
Yeah, and when it comes to Airbnbs, when it first kind of came on the scene, we liked using them. The privacy, you get your own suite or your own house. But there's factors that come into it. I think a lot of people get into it because they like to go to Florida several times a year. So let me get a house in the suburbs and I can go there and Airbnb it when I'm not there. But as you're saying, location is big. And then looking at some studies that Airbnb's done, location is a huge factor in having low vacancy rates, and then amenities. If you have a pool, it's obviously in the winter in Kansas City, it's not good. But if you're in a warm climate, a pool, they see a way more bookings than something without a pool. And then there's people that don't put anything in it. They don't have coffee makers and the basic necessities that you would get at a hotel, and those are going to hurt you there too. So there's more that goes into it, I feel like, that and purchasing, the biggest thing is location. If it's not convenient, if there's a hotel that's more convenient, people are going to stay there.
Yeah, and I've been screaming for at least the last 2 years that I really think, and I'm still very confident that this Airbnb market, let's not say Airbnb, I don't want to put a bad name on Airbnb. I think
Short term.
Airbnb's concept is absolutely amazing. So I want to just make that clear. What they created, the platform is awesome. When you do travel, it's great. But I do think they're going to get impacted pretty significantly because everybody wanted, it was the popular thing to do this past bull run, these last couple of years. And I think a lot of people that want to call themselves investors, I've seen a lot of them that really got into the rental market completely wrong. And I think they're going to learn the hard way, unfortunately. A lot of people were buying overpriced properties. Again, they had to buy to really make the return that people were talking about and bragging about and showing off. You have to buy a property in the right spots, and typically the right spots means great locations, which mean higher price, right? Well, if you're finding out about it, let's be honest, there's probably 10, 20, 100 other people that have already heard about it and already bought there. So you're a little late to the game. So you're already in, your basis is already way higher because the market's been absolutely crazy. So you bought this house at a high price, and your reasoning was likely because, oh, you could make 10,000 a month, so your cash flow is going to be great because now you're buying this at 3.5% down, right? Well, that's great. But what happens when the market pulls back and people start getting laid off? People are in fear of recession, or any kind of we got all these events with China, with Ukraine, with Russia. Everything is going on, and people are really starting to slow down. I talked to one large investor actually out in San Diego over the weekend, and they really specialize specifically in short-term rentals. And he owns, I mean, I don't even know how many himself, but they manage hundreds. And he sent me a stat this weekend. I was trying to find the exact stat here, but he was saying that, oh, here it is. Last week, this is comparing numbers year over year when it comes to bookings. Last week in his market, bookings totaled $38,767. Same week last year, $196,848 for the same week, same properties. That's less than 25%.
Yeah, that's alarming.
So that's a 75, 80% drop off in year over year bookings for the same location, same properties. That is astounding. And I think it's really just starting.
And his properties are in San Diego.
Correct. Yep.
That's a vacation spot. If you were to think of I want an Airbnb or short term rental in a good location, you're thinking beach towns and travel areas. And yeah, that's alarming. San Diego is a great city, and I know they have some political stuff going on with their short term rentals, but none of that's in effect yet. So this is just purely stats
Mm-hmm.
of their vacation year by year.
Right. I think you hit exactly what I was going to say next is so we have prices and the housing market was already high. So you're buying overpriced properties likely. Um, you're leveraging because interest rates are so low. So that's how you're marrying the rate, as some people like to say. I think that's a scam.
That's a hot topic.
Personally.
That's the
Yeah,
line right
marrying the
now.
rate has been, I think that's the biggest scam there is. I hate when people say it. I think it's ridiculous. But the next thing I was going to talk about was regulations. We are seeing tons of regulations, and you've got trust me, guys. The hotels aren't taking this lightly. Cities don't like it, so the hotels are actually getting more into the Airbnb. You've got, I believe it's Marriott. I was doing some research on it. Marriott's actually started to buy single family properties and do short term rentals, but they've also started to become much more competitive in their rates and everything else. And they're multi-billion-dollar corporations. They're not going to take this lightly, where a bunch of uh, individuals are going out and making 10,000 a month in profits, right? So they're going to want to get into it, but they're also going to pay to lobby cities. And that's what we're seeing across the country right now is regulations, and it's city per city. So unless you really understand and know these regulations, you better be very careful. I've seen people, the Lake of the Ozarks here in the Midwest is a popular spot for Airbnbs, and especially the last couple of years, and there's been so many people that I've talked to that are talking about getting into short-term rentals and how much they're going to make and telling me all these things. So one of the first questions I ask them is, well, have you seen the ordinances they're pushing through the city council right now? What? I just kind of laugh and I'm like, man, everybody's trying to get into this without doing any research. And Ryan, San Diego, tell us kind of what's going on out there. And I think it's happening. San Diego is one of the biggest spots for Airbnbs, if I'm going to be honest. And I know, especially Coronado, that little island right off of San Diego, they have some strict restrictions out there already. But tell us what San Diego is looking at doing.
Yeah, so San Diego, obviously a big vacation destination for people here in America, and they've had a big problem, especially with like homes close to the beach, that people are just buying them up and turn them into short-term rentals. So what they're gonna do is put regulation in place and do a lottery system on uh, how many. So you can only have so many short-term rentals in one area, and they're even talking about they're not grandfathering the ones in, because you walk down some of these boardwalks. We're walking down Mission Beach, pretty boardwalk. They have the roller coasters and stuff down the street, and almost every house is call this number short term rental, call this number short term rental, and even if you go in to the streets, same thing. If you're within walking distance of the beach, people are buying them up and renting them out, and it's not giving residents there that work in that community, they can't find homes. And so the government stepping in, and also like you said, I believe this big is when this short-term rental first came on, I think hotels probably thought it's a different customer base, I'm not too worried about it. And then they'd start realizes their pockets are getting a little lighter, and they got tired of it. So I'm sure they're over there helping campaigns that are, not for short-term rentals. It'd also be good for the citizens in the area. But I mean, you walk down the boardwalk and it's 90% short-term rentals. It's not that fun. I want to see people out, hanging out, doing
Yeah.
stuff. But also, yeah, I would like the luxury of renting one. But I do think there's oversaturation, which is what's forcing these cities like San Diego to put these regulations in place.
Yeah, a couple of things there that I want to hit on. So the not grandfathering in current short-term rentals, that's a real interesting topic. That can get pretty interesting to see how do they go about that lottery system? Because if I owned a bunch of those, am I trying to lobby and pay to get extra? Like, what does that look like? I don't know. I haven't looked into their rules and regulations. So maybe that's something we can come back with, Ryan. We could dig in a little bit more and another show, couple weeks down the road, talk about that. But yeah, that's interesting. I think people need to be very familiar with that. They're like, if you're going to go spend the money to invest, you should always know what you're getting into. I think we've become lazy as a society and just expecting things to happen because somebody on the internet told us without doing our own research. And I think that's across the board when it comes to 401ks, IRAs, everything. Well, you got three options. Do you want to go high risk, low risk, medium risk? Pick one, we'll invest it for you. It's like, hang on, that's ridiculous. Number one, you shouldn't be doing that. Number two, you can't get mad then if something happens in the markets and your money's lost. Like, oh, now you're mad at your financial advisor. Well, hey, you actually didn't even know what they were investing in. So same thing here with these Airbnbs. I truly think they're going to flood the market. I've already seen people panicking. We kind of mentioned in a previous show that people are going to try to do a couple different things, right? They're going to try to either fire sale them. Well, I bet you a lot of people are going to they're going to try to long-term rent them and then realize, holy cow, I can't really cover the mortgage on the long-term rental. And then they'll fire sale. A lot of people will, because they realize quickly that they can't long-term rent them for what they need to cover their spreads. Or all these people that are in multiple leases, what kind of lawsuits start happening? These guys that have bragged about going around and signing leases on all these houses, and then now they're subleasing them. That's been an issue too that we've had to overcome, I'm sorry, several times, is figuring that piece of the puzzle out. Not nearly as much here with our stuff that we've got. We've got a pretty niche little area in Kansas City, our product that we go for. But so those things we're going to keep an eye on. I think that what people really should be doing when they're buying short-term rentals, because look, short-term rentals are still a great asset if you know what you're doing and you're doing it right. I am not at all saying don't go buy short-term rentals. I am saying it is a business. It is an investment. You need to do the research, and you really need to make sure that you have X amount of expenses saved up, because there's going to be months when these things get nasty throughout the world. And as the market continues to be a little bit of a roller coaster right now, people are going to get laid off and people are going to start traveling. It's one of the first things cut out of a budget. You got car payments. That's another industry that I am extremely worried about. Honestly, I'm not worried about it. I don't have any car payments. I'm excited for it, but I think there's going to be. We want to talk about an 2008 housing crisis. I think the future in 10 years, we're going to be talking about a 2022, 2023 car crisis, car lending crisis, predatory lending. I mean, it's pretty bad. And the average American, I believe average American's car payment was like $500 or more, I believe is what I was seeing the other day. Like, that is insane. That's a whole nother rant though. But if you're going to do it, look into it. Another couple things that I've been looking at, and why I'm concerned there, is people overpaid for furniture. The pandemic, all the supply chain issues that happened during everything caused a ton of shortage in furniture. So now you've got an asset that you overpaid for in the house. You've got furniture that you just spent whatever you could possibly spend just to get stuff in there because you had to get at least out. Trust me, I've furnished a few houses in the last 2 years, and it is not cheap.
And how's the resale on it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's terrible. Honestly, right now you can still get okay, but I've been watching a few things and talking to some people that are moving around, and it's getting a little bit better. But it still is a little high on the furniture, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to get 50% of what you bought it for, probably. And that's the max. Back in the day, I was getting like $100, $200 for a couch that we'd be spending way more than $100 or $200 on. I can promise you that. Maybe 10% of what you were buying it for. So yeah, you overpaid for the house, you overpaid for the furniture, you overpaid for the remodel work. So there's just all these things that are going to end up coming and clashing at once, because people are going to stop traveling as much, and everybody's going to start dropping their rate, because when people stop traveling, everybody wants to get their place at least filled up to try and cover their spread. Well, if nobody's covering the spread, it's going to be a race to not to the bottom, but it's going to be a race to how low can we go? And you know who's going to win in that? Not the people that own one short-term rental. Probably not the people that own two or three. You've got to have economies of scale. it's no different. I say all the time, and like I said, we own we've been buying up property since 2015, and we have bought 100 plus properties personally. And it's all a numbers game, but owning one rental will bankrupt you. Um, if you buy it as your first primary home, you live there for a couple of years, you keep it, you move to the next one, keep doing that. That's fine. But if you're buying it straight as an investment, I promise you, things will happen. It doesn't matter how long you lived there, how great everything worked. The minute somebody else moves into that house, things are going to start to break. And it just happens. It's just a part of it. And I just kind of laugh sometimes because I'm like, man, I'm not kidding you. I lived there for X amount of years and never had an issue. And now they move in, and the first week they're there, the garbage disposal breaks or isn't working. And it's like, well, what are you putting down the garbage disposal? People are just harder on stuff that they don't own. Ryan, tell us kind of your experience. I mean, you've got what, one or two rental properties as well?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's not their stuff. And the worst thing is when people break something and don't tell you. Well, one of your rental properties, actually, we went into, a guy was in there forever, and unfortunately he passed away old age, but we went in there later to clean it up, and there was a 3 by 3 hole in the floor, and he never told anybody. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, if he would have told somebody, it would have got addressed. And think of how long that issue has had to be there. He just didn't want anybody
Mhm.
bothering him, so he never said anything. And in the end, that's going to affect like the investors' pockets, because like if I could have addressed this when it first became an issue, it would have saved us money.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to ask you, when did you start real estate investing? It's been
In 2015, I bought my first property. I actually bought it as a primary residence. It was a townhome, but I bought it because I had a family member. Actually, my dad needed a place to go and live. So I had just started working full time a year or so earlier. I graduated college in what, 13, Ryan? Yeah,
yeah,
2013. And then I moved in with your cousin Cody over in those fourplexes where we had rent
yeah,
for, I think we paid $150 a piece a month. It
family
was
price,
dirt
yeah.
cheap, family price. Yeah, those fourplexes, they still are little dinky places, but hey, you know what? For that price, that's all I cared about. I wanted to save money, start getting into real estate, and pay off
So
debt. Um,
so where I want
so
to
yeah,
go with
2015.
Yeah, so where I want to go with this is people get into short-term rentals because they see the potential cash flow. We can both agree cash flow is sexy. But
It's king.
after being in the game for a while, people are buying these overpriced homes like you're saying. They're not getting the other part of the investing, which is the appreciation of the
Yeah,
property. I mean, that's when you first get into it, I
yeah,
feel like you don't
that's
look at that.
correct.
But over 10 years,
I think
that's where people make their money, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, one what I would say to that is you should always have multiple strategies when you're investing, multiple options on any asset. I'm always looking for multiple things. What's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? What's an okay scenario? What am I really looking for? Is that middle ground, right? And short-term rental could have been the best case scenario on some of these properties. Just to be honest with you, we were in a different spot. Yeah, we probably could have made a couple $100 more a month, but where we were at, how fast we were growing and expanding several other businesses, it just didn't really make sense. Really struggled in the maintenance side of things and just keeping people um, helping us the last couple of years. And trust me, I remember things, helped grow a lot of people's businesses, and they got busy and started burning us. Or their prices just got to a point where I just cannot pay that. The thing is, though, what people don't realize is when everything's cyclical, when things slow down, those people start calling back because they're like, "Hey, I'm slower. Do you need any help?" When I'm starting to get those calls already. It's like, I like you, I respect you, I'm very happy for you, but right now I've got other guys that have taken care of me the last year, last 6 months, whatever it is. And when times were tough and everything was going great for everybody, we were struggling in this area and you burned us on it. And I'm sorry, but right now I don't have anything. Not being vindictive by any means. The reality is just that I take care of my people. If you take care of us, I promise you, give us a fair price. I'm not trying to get the cheapest price. That's one thing I try to tell all all people that own properties, property managers, everybody, stop trying to beat them down to the bottom dollar. Pay them a fair price for good quality, and you will have way less headaches across the board. That's something that so many investors want to just beat you down, builders, developers, everybody, even just everyday people are so cheap. Just pay somebody a good price for a good product. And that's it. That's all we ask for. But we're always looking for those three things. So again, sorry, I got on a tangent there, but what's the best case? What's the worst case? And where do we really want to be? Okay. Kind of that middle ground. And then what's the exit strategy, or what's the long-term goal? I don't look at 1, 2, 3 years. A lot of people are getting into real estate right now thinking I could buy this house, live in it, sell it in 2 years for 30 grand profit and buy the next one. It's like we have created a very unrealistic just an unrealistic mindset because of how crazy the market has been. I've got clients that are getting upset when they're calling me right now that bought a house a year or two ago and talking about maybe selling because they're starting to get a little scared, or they think they can take advantage of the market still and then sit back for 6 months and buy way cheaper. And I'm just telling them, like, guys, you just bought this house back in March. You typically on average 5 to 7 years is what people would stay in a home before, and that's still kind of average. It's gone down to like 4 to 5 years, I think, right now, because everybody's just churning. But on average, 5 to 7 years is what you need to expect. And a lot of the time, even then, like, people weren't making 50, 60, 70 grand on most of those houses. They were making enough to cover their expenses and pocket a little bit. But really, what you got to look at is you just live there for free a lot of the times for those 5 or 7 years. So, like, yeah, you may not pocket a ton of money at the end of that, but if you don't owe anything, you just live there for free pretty much for the last 7 years. Is how that breaks down versus paying rent to somebody that's going to nothing. So what's the exit strategy? And then when you're buying a property as well, what's the value? What's the value add? How can I add value to this property to make it more to raise the rents? Yeah, to make it more desirable. Or when I'm buying it, what is somebody else not seeing on this property that could make it a unique property? So when you're buying short-term rentals, especially right now with all these regulations and things that are happening, you might want to make sure that you have the ability to go to a to like a hotel or a motel zoned area. If you're in the middle of a neighborhood, I can promise you that's probably not the case. I think on some of the coasts, that's what you're going to see is some of these properties are going to go to they're going to require hotel or motel zoning. That's another big issue people need to start realizing is if they change that zoning, or when you change that zoning on your property, your taxes are going way up because now you are a business. And that's another reason cities are pissed. And you know what? They have the right to be, not just cities, but some of these corporations and guys like us. I mean, we're doing everything by the book. And sometimes it's frustrating because there are so many guys out there that aren't, and they're doing it way cheaper, especially like contractors, people that want to do stuff under the table. That's okay. I have nothing against that. But it's hard for us to be able to pay some people because we have to pay somebody that has insurance, somebody that has workers' comp, somebody that, they have to hit all these things. They have to have a license. So it gets hard, and people don't realize that costs more money for each of those, and that's okay. That's why we're happy to pay a fair price for a fair quality product. But don't get mad at me when I can't not 1099. We got a lot of contractors get upset because they don't want a 1099. They just want us to pay in cash. And it's like, look, we're a business. We are an operation. We are not, doing this under the table. We pay our taxes. We do these things right because we are a legitimate company. And where some of these short-term rentals are going to really start getting into issues is if they start changing zoning or requiring business licenses, requiring all these things. Well, I hope you've been paying your taxes the last couple of years properly, because now you're wondering what all those 80,000 people that are getting hired at the IRS are going to do. Uh-oh, watch out. They're not idiots, guys. Like, people want to trash on the government, this and that. I've got my opinion on them. Great. I've worked for the government before. It is a little bit of an interesting work environment. I couldn't stay there for very long because it was almost mind numbing. Just so slow paced for me. But they know that people are making money out there on all these things and aren't paying their taxes. Everybody's bragging about how much money they're making. Well, how come all this money's being made and nobody's paying these taxes? What's going on here? Keep bragging about stuff. They've got people on these social media. I guarantee the IRS has a department just watching social media influencers and everybody else and tracking. And that's something that people need to just stop trying to trick the system. You're never going to trick the system. Pay it. Do stuff that's right. But definitely be aware on the short-term rentals that if things start changing, you might be in a little bit of pain. So just have another strategy of what's it look like if you do live in or have a house in San Diego and you don't win that raffle or that lottery system, right? Or what happens if they do change your zoning to hotel, motel? What do your prices look like then? Like, how much more do you need to make to truly cover your monthly cost? It's going to be a lot more. Like, it's not a small number if you get zoning changed. It is way more than what personal property or than what a single family home costs. I mean, significantly more, 10 times probably. And so, I mean, in a lot of areas, it just depends on where you're at. I would say in Kansas City, you're probably talking 7 to 10 times more in property tax.
So, and we're running out of time, so we'll wrap up here shortly. But yeah, you got to look at if your prices go up or you want to increase your prices. One big complaint Airbnb's getting right now is people are already kind of seeing the effects and stuff, and vacancies are increasing, and they're just trying to tack on their cleaning fees. They're increasing their clean. They're doing
Crazy.
like $100 a night cleaning fees.
Oh, more than that on some of these. I've seen some as high as $200-$300 a night.
Crazy. And so if these taxes come in and you can't cover your payment as a long-term rental, maybe start thinking about an exit strategy. But I think what you said hit it best. Going forward in the future, if you're looking at a home, best case, worst case, what's ideal? And going into that mindset, because if you got to cover your bases. I think that's a great strategy.
Ideal is always best case, right?
Right.
Yeah, ideal is always best case, but what's realistic, I guess, is probably the best way to say that is,
yeah,
what's best case, what's worst case? Realistically, what are we looking for? And be realistic with yourself, because you can shoot for the moon every time. I promise you, everything, you will have hiccups. You will get kicked when you're down, and you will get kicked again. It's all part of owning a business and an operation. Just be prepared for it. Not everything is going to go as smoothly as you hope and think. Hopefully it does. If that does happen for you, please call me. I would love to know how you're doing it. But you're going to lose money. It is what it is. But yeah, always have an exit strategy as well. And really, just my 2 cents, buy properties that you can add value. Buying properties that are already at the top, unless you're a hedge fund or you have a strategy going into it that, all right, we're going to come in, our entire goal and strategy, which is great because this is very profitable, but we are going to build a company that we have the ability to exit to a private equity firm within 12, 24 months. That's awesome. That's a whole nother deal. But if you're a mom and pop shop like we are, or a smaller guy a guy that's trying to build a little bit of a portfolio and a little bit of income, and retirement. I don't like that word very much, to be honest, but just build some wealth and some cash flow, then have a plan, buy properties that have value add, you know, getting very familiar with the market you're going to buy in. Don't trust anybody else, not even your favorite realtor, unless it's my client. Wink, wink. I think that's what's truly grown our business so fast, though. If I'm just going to be real with you, is I'm just honest with people. I let people make their own decisions. Sometimes I say too much. I should probably shut up. Uh, but I know that if I'm honest with them, if they make that decision, they know it's on them. Um, and I'm going to make you walk away from more houses than not, because I'm going to probably tear a house apart just because I'm looking at things differently from an investor mindset. So, looking at zoning is a great idea, or understanding what might be coming that way in a city that you're working in the next 10 years, and buying properties that might be in a rezoned area, in the next decade. Just stuff like that. There's little tricks, or taking a threeplex and having the ability to make it into a fourplex, or all different things. Start looking at things differently, and you will be successful. Short-term rentals, start figuring out what you're going to do. Hopefully, everything's going to be good. But
Yeah.
anyway, well, guys, I think that's it. Sorry, Ryan, I'll let you wrap this one up. You started it, you wrap it up.
Yeah, guys, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. And then also check us out on Twitter. We're getting on Twitter Spaces a lot. Come have a conversation with us.